Why did the most famous Star Wars droids dislike each other? What got Darth Vader banned from franchise events? We answer these questions and more as we look back at the biggest feuds behind the scenes of Star Wars. Darth Vader is one of the most imposing figures in sci-fi, and a lot of that had to do with his height, costume, and mask. In Star Wars, the man behind the mask was David Prowse, who stood at 6 feet 7 inches. Prowse also provided the dialogue for Darth Vader on set, but George Lucas hired James Earl Jones to dub over everything he said.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Prowse wasn't happy about that, but he remained a part of the franchise. In 1978, the actor made a public appearance and revealed a key detail about the sequel, which was captured by the San Francisco Examiner. According to the paper, Prowse teased an epic lightsaber battle between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, and then teased that Luke would find out that Vader is his father, which would of course lead to another epic showdown in the next film. It was, it turned out, a major spoiler for The Empire Strikes Back. The funny thing was, of course, that The Empire Strikes Back hadn't even been written yet. According to The Sun, Prowse later called his spoiler, quote, a lucky guess. Though Prowse remained in the Darth Vader suit for 1983's Return of the Jedi, Lucas cast actor Sebastian Shaw to play the role of the unmasked Vader, passing Prowse over in the process. In 2010, Prowse appeared in The People vs. George Lucas, a decidedly anti-Lucas documentary. That same year, Prowse was banned from attending any Star Wars events. David Prowse and George Lucas's relationship was no more. By the time Sir Alec Guinness starred as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, he was nearing the end of a long and celebrated career in film and on stage. Long before George Lucas dreamed up his story, Guinness was playing now iconic roles in films like The Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia. The veteran performer was one of many talented English actors who appeared in the first Star Wars film. But unlike his peers, Sir Alec Guinness didn't love working on the movie, and actually came to loathe the character he played. He wrote his friend Anne Kaufman a letter before accepting the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and called the story, quote, fairy tale rubbish, though he was at least happy to have a big role in it. Not only did Guinness dislike the movie, he also returned any Star Wars fan mail unopened, and didn't want to be approached regarding his role as Kenobi. The actor even once begged George Lucas to kill off the character, Force Ghost and all. One of the most fascinating behind-the-scenes feuds in the Star Wars franchise was between George Lucas and pretty much every professional guild in the film industry. It all started with the first movie's opening crawl, which pushed the director, cast, and crew credits to the end of the film. That was technically allowed if the director signed a waiver, so the Writers Guild of America and Directors Guild of America let it happen. When it came time for The Empire Strikes Back, though, the guilds didn't approve. Their disagreement was due to the inclusion of the words a Lucasfilm Limited production, with no mention of Irvin Kershner, the film's director, before the opening crawl. That exclusion violated the guild's rules, and according to the New York Times, George Lucas was fined by the Directors Guild for his offense. Lucas paid the bill, but he was so frustrated over what happened, he pulled out of the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, and the Motion Picture Association entirely. This is a feud that's never been resolved, as Lucas never returned to any of the professional guilds in his industry. Despite this, he continued to make movies, often financing them himself through his massive Star Wars profits. Interestingly, the feud is the reason Lucas hired Richard Marquand to direct Return of the Jedi, since he had to find a director who didn't belong to the guild who was willing to sign on. By the time of Return of the Jedi, director Richard Marquand was at the helm. For the most part, the cast and crew got along with the director, but Carrie Fisher despised working with Marquand, which made the third film in the original trilogy a nightmare for her. In an interview with the Daily Beast, Fisher described how she felt about Marquand, saying, "I hated him. He fell all over Harrison, but he would yell at me constantly." According to Fisher, at one point, Marquand yelled at her to the point that she, quote, burst into tears, leaving the makeup team scrambling to redo her makeup for the next scene. In Hollywood, there's a poorly kept secret that George Lucas ghost-directed several scenes in Return of the Jedi. Whether this had something to do with the cast issues or Lucas's controlling nature has long been debated. Still, for whatever reason, he got involved. When George Lucas finally came back to release his long-awaited Star Wars prequel trilogy, he hired a plethora of talented actors. One of the most celebrated was Terrence Stamp, who was cast as Chancellor Valorum in The Phantom Menace. Stamp was meant to reprise his role in the sequel, but chose not to return. The reason for his absence was simple: he really disliked working with George Lucas. To illustrate his point, Stamp told Empire a story in which he came to the film set hoping to meet its young star Natalie Portman, because he was a fan of her work in the film The Professional. When he got to set and asked where Portman was, Lucas pointed to a piece of paper on a wall indicating that Stamp was meant to act across from a blue screen, not an actor. Being asked to perform his scenes without other real actors in the room made Stamp's time on the film, quote, just boring, so he opted out of any sequels. Harrison Ford and George Lucas don't have a massive history of feuding. After all, Lucas made Ford into a massive movie star. But that doesn't mean the two didn't clash on set, especially where Han Solo was concerned. Ford famously brushed off the character, referring to him as, quote, Ham Yo-Yo, and he's gone on record plenty of times saying he wanted Solo to be killed off. He finally got that wish granted in The Force Awakens, but long before that happened, he and Lucas argued about Solo. A lot. George Lucas's ability to write compelling dialogue has been called into question over the years, which Ford has since joked about in numerous interviews. He eventually admitted he was wrong, but they still butted heads.
I think George likes people. I think George is a warm-hearted person. But he's a little impatient with the process of acting.
Harrison Ford has described Han Solo as a character he had no interest in, but his concern over dialogue may prove otherwise. On the set of The Empire Strikes Back, he and director Irvin Kershner debated over his iconic line in response to Princess Leia's I love you. Han says, I know, which wasn't in the script. Ford clearly cared what Solo said at that moment, and he convinced the director to let him keep the change for the final cut of the movie. Arguably the most significant role in the Star Wars prequel trilogy was the central protagonist turned antagonist, Anakin Skywalker. For The Phantom Menace, the part was given to Jake Lloyd, a relatively unknown child actor with a few credits under his belt. Lloyd's participation in the franchise was something that could have created a long and profitable career. Sadly, it did the opposite, leading the young star to quit acting altogether shortly after the movie's release. Of all the actors who had trouble following their appearance in a Star Wars project, none could be worse off than Jake Lloyd. He came to hate his time working for George Lucas, saying that it ruined his life. According to Lloyd, he was constantly teased for his portrayal of Anakin, and according to the Daily Mail, described school after the film as a horrible experience. The young actor was doing up to 60 interviews a day and did not enjoy the limelight. As a result, he loathed the franchise, destroyed all of his memorabilia, and stopped making convention appearances. In many ways, Hayden Christensen's acting career was both made and unmade by his appearance in the Star Wars prequels. The actor gained a lot of fame with the role, but largely retired from the profession because he felt he hadn't earned the fame. Regardless, he was a big part of the second and third prequel films, and signed on to return to the franchise in the Disney Plus series centered on Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. While filming Attack of the Clones, Christensen was a handful for George Lucas. When the actor was filming any scene with a lightsaber, he made the unique sounds the weapon would make in the film. It's something everyone with a flashlight, paper tube, or stick has done at least one time in their lives, and Christensen was no different. He wasn't even aware he was making the sounds, which must have been second nature to the young fan of the franchise. At a Star Wars Celebration event years later, Christensen described how Lucas kept having to stop and tell him to stop making the sounds. Not really a full-blown feud, but still rough for a director just trying to get a shot. In 2012, George Lucas sold all of his Star Wars properties to Disney for $4.1 billion. Before long, the House of Mouse launched the production of a sequel to Return of the Jedi. When Lucas divested his interest in the franchise, he lost creative control, but that didn't mean he wasn't of use to Disney. He was hired on for The Force Awakens to work as a creative consultant, but it wasn't exactly a happy collaboration. Lucas ultimately walked away from the film and later explained what happened in a 2015 interview on Charlie Rose. According to Lucas, all of his story ideas for the sixth film were dismissed as the studio said they wanted to make something, quote, for the fans.
They decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing, and so I decided, fine.
Lucas later compared leaving the franchise he created to a breakup, and so far that's been true. Though he has visited some Star Wars sets, he hasn't worked on a project in the franchise since. One of the biggest feuds in the franchise was the one that existed between Anthony Daniels and Kenny Baker, who played C-3PO and R2-D2. The two actors were in droid costumes next to each other for 6 movies, and they never got along. In 2005, Kenny Baker told Hollywood.com that Anthony Daniels didn't like to, quote, mix it all with the rest of the cast, and recalled more than one occasion when Daniels was rude to him. Baker was more outspoken about the feud than Daniels, but Daniels would say something about their relationship every so often. In 2015, Daniels told The Sun that Baker wasn't really as much of a part of Star Wars as he was, saying, "He's not actually on set. I haven't seen him for years. His name is on the credits as a sort of, I don't know, a good luck charm, a courtesy. He's a talisman." Despite their harsh words for each other, when Baker passed away in 2016, Daniels publicly expressed his condolences over the loss of his former co-star. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Nikki Swift videos about movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.